Brothers and sisters in Islam, let me begin with a question. Is kindness always a virtue even when it empowers evil? Think about that. Because today, the world sells us a false gospel of be kind, no matter what, love everyone blindly, forgive endlessly. But Islam is not a religion of blind softness. It is a religion of balance, of justice, of mercy rooted in wisdom. Allah did not command us to stretch out our hands to the oppressor, nor to smile at the face of corruption. He commanded us to be merciful with truth, compassionate with discernment, and just even when our hearts pull us to foolish kindness. In Islam, kindness is indeed one of the most beautiful qualities a believer can embody, but it is never meant to be blind. Allah and His Messenger emphasize mercy, compassion, and gentleness, but they also emphasize wisdom, discernment, and justice. Kindness that lacks understanding can easily turn into a weapon against truth, because when kindness is given to those who abuse it, it does not bring about goodness. It feeds corruption and falsehood. This is why Islam commands balance. Kindness that is guided by truth, and truth that is delivered with kindness. When we look into the Qur'an, we find that Allah praises believers for their mercy and compassion. He describes the Prophet Allah as a mercy to the world. His character was defined by gentleness, forgiveness, and humility. However, we must also remember that the same Prophet Allah showed firmness when the truth of Allah was challenged, when the weak were oppressed, and when the limits of Allah were violated. This teaches us that Islam does not call us to be kind at all costs, but to be kind in the right way and at the right time. Blind kindness, on the other hand, leads to dangerous consequences. Imagine being kind to someone who is openly oppressing others. Instead of correcting them, advising them, or standing up for justice, you smile and support them in the name of kindness. What have you achieved? You have enabled oppression and betrayed the oppressed. Islam calls this a form of zulm, wrongdoing. Zulm is not only harming someone directly, but also standing by silently while harm is committed. If your kindness makes the wrongdoer feel safe in their wrongdoing, then your kindness is no longer a virtue, it is a weakness that allows evil to flourish. The Quran warns us directly in Surah Hud, do not incline toward those who do wrong, lest the fire should touch you. This ayah is clear. Even leaning towards sympathizing with, or showing softness to oppressors, can make you share in their punishment. Islam does not command us to hate people without reason, but it commands us to recognize the difference between kindness that brings goodness, and kindness that feeds evil. This is why our kindness must be selective, intentional, and guided by truth. There is also wisdom in how kindness is applied. Sometimes what looks like harshness is actually the truest form of mercy. For example, when a child reaches for something harmful, the parent snatches it away, and the child may cry. To the child, that action looks unkind, but in reality the parent's firmness is an act of care, because it saves the child from harm. Similarly, when a believer speaks the truth firmly to someone who is oppressing others, it may not feel kind in the moment, but it is actually an act of mercy, both for the oppressed who need protection, and for the oppressor who needs correction before it is too late. The Prophet Allah embodied this balance perfectly. He was known for his gentleness, yet when the Quraysh leaders mocked the message of Islam or when injustice was committed, he stood unshaken. His kindness never made him compromise the truth. He forgave when forgiveness would soften a heart, but he remained firm when softness would be taken advantage of. This is the model of Islamic kindness. It is never blind. In our times, people often promote the idea of unconditional kindness. Be nice to everyone no matter what. While this may sound appealing, it is not the Islamic way. Islam teaches us to be merciful, but not naive, to be compassionate, but not gullible. If you are kind to everyone without discernment, you risk empowering corruption, feeding arrogance, and betraying the innocent. But when your kindness is guided by wisdom, you uplift those who deserve support, and you withhold softness from those who would abuse it. That is the balance Allah loves. Thus, kindness in Islam is not a matter of blind generosity of the heart. It is a matter of insight. It must be aligned with justice, grounded in truth, and applied with wisdom. To be merciful without wisdom is weakness. To be firm without mercy is cruelty. But to be merciful with wisdom and firm with justice, that is the balance of Islam. The Quran gives us clear guidance when it comes to our relationship with wrongdoers. Allah says in Surah Hud, do not incline toward those who do wrong, lest the fire should touch you. This ayah is powerful, because it warns believers not only against committing injustice themselves, but even against leaning towards, or sympathizing with those who do wrong. It teaches us that Islam does not allow neutrality in the face of oppression. Even if a believer claims that their kindness is just a gesture, if that kindness supports the wrongdoer, it is no longer innocent, it becomes a share in their sin. This principle is essential because human beings are naturally influenced by the company they keep. If you sit with the oppressor, defend him, or show softness to his evil actions, then you have in a way legitimized his behavior. The Qur'an is warning us that such an inclination is dangerous to one's faith and can bring the punishment of Allah. It is not enough to avoid doing wrong yourself. Islam demands that you do not even give your support, approval or silent acceptance to those who harm others. The Prophet ﷺ explained this concept in many ways. He said, "Whoever of you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand. If he cannot, then with his tongue, and if he cannot, then with his heart, and that is the weakest of faith." This hadith highlights that faith requires action against evil, at least in rejection, if not in correction. To incline toward oppressors contradicts this teaching, because instead of rejecting their evil, you show comfort or agreement with it. Even a smile, a word of encouragement, or remaining silent in their gatherings can count as inclination, which Allah has forbidden. This does not mean that Islam calls for hostility without reason. Rather, it means that kindness and support must be placed in the right direction. When someone is oppressing, supporting them under the banner of kindness is a betrayal of the oppressor. For example, if a tyrant is harming innocent people and you shake his hand, praise him, or remain silent while he boasts of his power, then you have inclined toward him. Even if you tell yourself you are doing so out of politeness, the reality is that your actions have comforted him in his wrongdoing. Allah warns us that such comfort is enough to draw us closer to punishment. History is full of examples that illustrate this lesson. During the time of Pharaoh, some among the people of Musa alayhi salam kept quiet out of fear, while others even admired Pharaoh's power. Yet Allah destroyed Pharaoh and those who supported him, while saving the oppressed believer. Similarly, in the time of the Prophet the Quraysh leaders oppressed the weak and mocked the message. There were those in Mecca who did not actively fight against Islam, but still inclined toward the leaders because of tribal loyalty or social comfort. Such people were not praised in the Quran. Rather, the Quran repeatedly condemned siding with falsehood, whether actively or passively. The wisdom here is that every act of kindness has weight. When directed at the right people, kindness uplifts society. When directed at oppressors, kindness strengthens oppression. A believer must always ask, who is benefiting from my softness? Am I giving comfort to someone who needs mercy? Or am I giving comfort to someone who will use it to continue harming others? This self-check is crucial, because Shaitan deceives people by making them think that all kindness is good, when in reality misplaced kindness can be a tool of injustice. Therefore, the Quran's command not to incline toward wrongdoers is both a protection and a principle. It protects the believer's faith by drawing a line that should not be crossed. It also establishes the principle that kindness without justice is not praiseworthy in Islam. If you find yourself in a situation where your kindness empowers a wrongdoer, then withholding that kindness is not cruelty, it is obedience to Allah. The most dangerous thing a believer can do is give the impression that wrongdoing is acceptable. To stand firm and withdraw softness in the face of oppression is a sign of faith, while inclining towards it is a path that leads to destruction. Mercy is one of the greatest qualities that Islam emphasizes, but mercy without justice is not considered true mercy in the sight of Allah. It becomes a form of betrayal, both to the oppressed and to the very essence of justice itself. The Quran repeatedly describes Allah as a Rahman, the most merciful, but also as Allah, the most just. This combination shows us that mercy and justice must go hand in hand. To separate them is to distort the balance that Islam calls us to uphold. When a person shows mercy to someone who is committing oppression, that mercy does not stop the oppression. Instead, it emboldens the oppressor to continue. If a thief steals and you respond by saying, "It is fine, I forgive you," without any consequence or correction, you have not done justice. You may feel you have been merciful, but in reality you have betrayed the victims who were harmed and even the thief himself, because you have allowed him to sink deeper into sin. This is why Islam does not encourage mercy that ignores justice. Forgiveness in personal matters is noble, but in matters of public wrongdoing or oppression, justice must come first. The Prophet love was the embodiment of mercy, yet he never allowed mercy to become an excuse for injustice. He forgave his enemies when forgiveness would soften their hearts and lead them to truth. But when people violated the rights of others, he established justice. For example, a noble woman from the tribe of Maksum once committed theft. Some companions tried to intercede on her behalf. Because of her status, the Prophet loved Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, stole. I would cut off her hand. His response was not a lack of mercy but the purest form of justice. To pardon her out of tribal loyalty or pity would have been betrayal to society, and would have destroyed fairness. Mercy in that situation would not have been mercy at all. It would have been injustice disguised as compassion. We also see in the Qur'an that Allah warns against enabling oppression through false compassion. Mercy has a place, but when it is misused it becomes a cover for cowardice or laziness. Some people choose mercy because they are too afraid to confront evil, or because they do not want to bear the burden of standing for justice. They convince themselves that they are being kind, but in reality they are betraying those who suffer. Islam calls this a form of hypocrisy, pretending to be virtuous while avoiding responsibility. True mercy must always serve the cause of justice. For example, imagine a judge who lets a criminal go free because he feels sorry for him. What happens? The criminal goes back to harming others, and more innocent people suffer. The judge's mercy was in fact betrayal of his duty, betrayal of the victims, and betrayal of society. On the other hand, if that judge enforces the punishment fairly, the criminal might learn a lesson, the victims receive justice, and society feels secure. That firmness is itself a form of mercy because it protects the community and prevents future harm. Mercy without justice also betrays the oppressor himself. Allowing him to continue sinning without consequence is not kindness, it is cruelty, because every sin adds weight to his record before Allah. Stopping someone from oppression, even with firmness, can be a mercy that saves him from greater punishment in the hereafter. Just as a parent disciplines a child not out of hatred but out of care for the child's future, Islam demands that we stop oppressors not out of hostility but because letting them continue is betrayal. Therefore mercy in Islam is never blind. It must be applied with wisdom, in its proper place, and always alongside justice. The Prophet fought Quraysh after the conquest of Mecca, but only after truth had been established and their arrogance broken. That forgiveness brought people into Islam and healed wounds. But when mercy is shown at the expense of justice, it only deepens corruption. The Quran teaches that Allah's mercy is vast, but it never comes at the expense of his justice. Likewise, our mercy should never betray the rights of others. To comfort an oppressor is betrayal. To overlook harm without redress is betrayal. To claim kindness while ignoring injustice is betrayal. True mercy is to protect the innocent, correct the oppressor, and uphold justice in all circumstances. The life of the Prophet Muhammad is the best example of how to balance softness with firmness. He was sent as a mercy to the worlds, and his gentleness and compassion won countless hearts. Yet at the same time he never compromised on the truth of Allah, and when firmness was required, he showed unwavering strength. This balance is one of the defining features of his character, and it shows us that Islam is not about leaning completely towards softness or harshness, but about embodying both in their proper places. The Prophet was known for his incredible gentleness in personal interaction. He treated children with tenderness, playing with them and carrying them on his shoulders. He was patient with the weak, the poor, and those who came to him with questions, even if they spoke in ignorance. A famous example is when a Bedouin once urinated inside the masjid. The companions were ready to rebuke him harshly, but the Prophet stopped them, telling them to let the man finish, and then gently explained to him that the masjid is a place of worship. The man left feeling honored and respected, not humiliated. This softness was a hallmark of his mercy. It brought people closer to Islam, softened hearts, and created an atmosphere of love and trust. But the same Prophet who was so gentle, could be firm like a mountain when the truth of Allah was under attack. In the early days of Islam, when Quraysh leaders tried to silence him with offers of wealth, leadership, and power, he firmly replied, "By Allah, if they placed the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, to abandon this matter, I would not abandon it until Allah makes it prevail, or I perish in the attempt." This was not the voice of softness. It was the voice of firmness in truth. He refused compromise, even when all the worldly incentives were placed before him. His strength was not rooted in arrogance, but in complete submission to Allah. Another example of his firmness was in battle. Though he disliked fighting, when it became necessary to defend the Muslim community, he led with courage and strategy. At Badr, Uhud and Hunain he stood among his companions, never retreating, showing that defending justice sometimes requires firmness that appears harsh, but is in fact mercy for the oppressed. His presence in the battlefield was a statement that mercy does not mean weakness, it means standing for truth, even against powerful enemies. The Prophet also showed firmness in matters of justice. When people tried to make excuses for the wealthy or influential, he made clear that the law applies equally to all. His famous statement regarding the woman who stole, "By Allah, if Fatima the daughter of Muhammad stole, I would cut off her hand," is an example of uncompromising firmness. This was not cruelty, it was justice. To pardon her out of softness would have destroyed fairness in the community. His firmness upheld justice, while his softness preserved mercy, and together they created balance. His balance also appeared in how he dealt with his enemy. When he conquered Mecca, he had every right to punish Quraysh severely for years of persecution, torture and war, yet he forgave them, declaring, "Go, for you are free." This act of mercy was not weakness, it came at a time when he was in full strength, after justice had been established, and truth had prevailed. His forgiveness healed wounds and opened the doors of Islam to many. But had they continued their arrogance and aggression, his response would have been firm. His mercy and his firmness both served the same goal, the establishment of truth and justice. This balance is the essence of prophetic character. Too much softness without firmness leads to weakness and the empowerment of evil. Too much firmness without softness leads to cruelty and hard-heartedness. The Prophet his companions learned from this balance, and it became the foundation of Islamic leadership. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, known for his firmness, and Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, known for his gentleness, both reflected different shades of this balance in their own way. For believers today, this prophetic balance is a crucial lesson. We must be kind, gentle, and forgiving in personal matters, but when the rights of Allah, kindness in the wrong place can feed injustice, while harshness in the wrong place can repel hearts. To follow the Prophet is to know when to be soft and when to be firm, guided always by wisdom and sincerity to Allah. This is the balance that defines true Islamic character. Kindness is one of the most beloved qualities in Islam, but like every virtue, it has boundaries. When kindness goes beyond its proper limits, it no longer remains a virtue, it turns into a weakness that can be exploited by those who intend harm. Islam does not call its followers to be endlessly kind without discernment. Instead, it calls for kindness that is rooted in wisdom, justice, and balance. A Muslim must know when kindness is beneficial and when withholding it is necessary. Boundaries protect kindness from being misused and ensure that it remains a force for good, rather than a tool that empowers evil. The Qur'an repeatedly reminds believers to be merciful and compassionate, but it also warns against showing softness to those who persist in wrongdoing. A believer may feel that by being kind to everyone, they are being noble, but if that kindness strengthens the hand of a tyrant, then it has crossed the line. This is why kindness must have limits. It cannot be given at the expense of justice, or at the cost of empowering harm. The Prophet Muhammad himself demonstrated these boundaries. He was the most merciful of all people, known for his gentleness and forgiveness, yet he never allowed kindness to undermine justice. When personal insults were directed at him, he forgave easily, but when the weak were oppressed, or the laws of Allah, he responded with firmness. His mercy was never without boundaries. He forgave Quraysh after the conquest of Mecca, but only after truth had been established and their arrogance had been broken. That forgiveness was strategic, wise and beneficial. But when individuals tried to use their status to escape justice, as in the case of the woman from the tribe of Maksum who stole, he did not allow mercy to interfere with the law. His boundary was clear. Kindness cannot cross into betrayal of justice. In our lives, boundaries in kindness are just as important. If you continuously forgive someone who wrongs you, but never corrects themselves, your forgiveness becomes a license for them to continue harming you. If you are endlessly generous to someone who takes advantage of you,
your generosity becomes fuel for their greed. If you are always accommodating to someone who disrespects you, your accommodation only strengthens their arrogance. Islam does not demand that you allow others to abuse your kindness. Rather, it teaches that kindness should be balanced with dignity, wisdom and justice. There is also the danger of kindness turning into hypocrisy. A person may show outward kindness to someone who is corrupt, smiling at them and praising them, all while knowing their wrongdoing. They justify it as being nice, but in reality, it is cowardice disguised as kindness. This kind of misplaced softness is a betrayal of the oppressed, and a betrayal of truth. By showing no boundaries, the person has allowed their kindness to be weaponized by the oppressed. True Islamic character refuses to cross that line. Boundaries also preserve the purity of kindness. When you know that your kindness is not limitless, but guided by wisdom, it retains its meaning. People trust your kindness because they know it is sincere, not a blanket softness that excuses evil. Even in personal relationships, boundaries ensure that kindness is appreciated, rather than abused. A parent who sets boundaries with their child is not less kind. They are more merciful, because they protect the child from harm. A teacher who corrects their students firmly is not unkind. They are setting limits that will shape the students into responsible individuals. Similarly, a believer who withholds kindness from an oppressor is not cruel. They are drawing a line that preserves justice and protects the community. Thus, kindness in Islam is not a weakness, nor is it limitless. It is a noble quality, but only when practiced with wisdom and within proper boundaries. A Muslim must be soft with those who deserve softness, firm with those who abuse it, and balanced in all dealing. Unconditional kindness may sound noble, but without limits, it turns into a force that sustains injustice. By setting boundaries, kindness remains what it was meant to be, a path to mercy, a means of healing, and a strength that serves truth, rather than betrays it. True Islamic character is defined by balance. Islam is not a religion of extremes, nor does it call its followers to live at one end of the spectrum of human behavior. It does not command complete harshness, nor does it encourage blind softness. Instead, it teaches that real strength lies in maintaining equilibrium, knowing when to be merciful, and when to be firm, when to forgive and when to demand justice, when to overlook and when to confront. This balance is what makes a Muslim's character complete, and it is the essence of living by haqq, the truth. Allah describes the Muslim Ummah as a middle nation in the Qur'an, and thus we have made you a justly balanced nation, that you may be witnesses over mankind and that the messenger may be a witness over you. Al-Baqarah 2:43. This verse sets the foundation for Islamic character. The Muslim is not extreme in leniency, nor extreme in severity, but stands in the middle, guided by wisdom. Balance means recognizing that mercy and justice are not opposites, but partners, and true faith requires both. The Prophet Muhammad embodied this balance perfectly. He was gentle with children, affectionate with his family, patient with the ignorant, and compassionate with the poor and oppressed. But when Allah's commands were violated, or injustice was committed, he displayed firmness and strength. His life shows us that one cannot claim to follow his sunnah by being only merciful, or only firm. Both qualities must exist together in harmony. His balance was not random, it was guided by the Qur'an and divine wisdom, teaching us that the believer must measure every situation and act in the way that serves truth. An example of this balance can be seen in his dealings with enemy. When Quraysh persecuted him and the early Muslims, he endured with patience and mercy, praying for their guidance. Yet when they launched battles to destroy Islam, he led his companions with courage and resolve. At the conquest of Mecca, he forgave most of his former enemies, showing immense mercy. But when certain individuals continued to spread corruption and refused to stop their aggression, he ordered firmness against them. His actions were not contradictory, they were balanced responses to different circumstances, each serving the greater purpose of justice and mercy together. Balance is also seen in personal conduct. A believer is not asked to be excessively strict with themselves to the point of hardship, nor excessively lenient to the point of neglect. The Prophet ﷺ said, "The best of deeds are those done consistently, even if small." This shows that balance is preferred over extremes in worship. Likewise, he taught moderation in dealings with others, loving, but not blindly, forgiving, but not foolishly, generous, but not wasteful. Every act of character is meant to reflect the middle path. When balance is lost, injustice results. Too much mercy, without justice, enables oppressors and betrays the innocent. Too much justice without mercy creates cruelty and alienates hearts. A society built on one extreme collapses, but a society built on balance thrives. This is why the Quran presents both qualities together. Allah is Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, and Al-Adl, the most just. Believers are called to reflect both in their character, so that their mercy does not make them weak, and their firmness does not make them hard-hearted. The wisdom of balance applies to all aspects of life. In family matters, parents must show love, but also set limits, so children grow with security and discipline. In leadership, rulers must be merciful to their people, but also firm in enforcing justice. In personal relations, friends must forgive mistakes, but also hold each other accountable. Balance ensures that kindness does not become gullibility, and firmness does not become oppression. The Prophet ﷺ summarized this principle when he said, "The strong person is not the one who overcomes others by force, but the strong one is the one who controls himself in anger." Here strength is shown not in extremes, but in balance, controlling one's emotions and responding in a way that upholds truth. Thus, true Islamic character is not found in blind kindness, nor in blind harshness, but in the balance between the two. To be merciful, when mercy brings good, and to be firm when firmness protects justice, is the path of the believer. This balance is the essence of wisdom, the mark of prophetic character, and the way to live as a justly balanced nation as Allah intended. Brothers and sisters, as we reflect on the message, Islam says don't be kind to all blindly. We are reminded that Islam is the religion of balance. It is not a path of blind softness that empowers oppression, nor a path of cold harshness that destroys mercy. It is the path of haq, truth, justice, and wisdom. Our kindness is valuable only when it uplifts the weak, heals the broken, and softens the hearts that are open to guide. But when kindness is directed at those who use it to spread corruption and injustice, it ceases to be a virtue and becomes a betrayal. The Quran warns us not to incline toward oppressors. The Prophet ﷺ showed us when to forgive and when to stand firm. Mercy without justice is betrayal, and justice without mercy is cruelty. True Islamic character is to know when to be soft, like the Prophet ﷺ was with the orphan, the widow, and the seeker of truth, and when to be unshakable like he was in the face of arrogance, tyranny, and falsehood. As Muslims, we must protect our kindness with wisdom. We must draw boundaries that preserve dignity and prevent evil from spreading. This balance is what makes us the middle nation that Allah chose to be witnesses over mankind. If we live with this balance, our mercy will be true mercy, our firmness will be true justice, and together they will reflect the prophetic path. So let us leave today with this resolve: to be merciful, but not naive, to be kind but not blind, to be firm but not unjust. And may Allah make us people of wisdom, whose mercy is guided by truth, and whose justice is wrapped in compassion.